Hey folks, I'm here today with Casey Scott, excellent astrologer from Gold Star Astrology. He's also been one of my students over the years, doing excellent work. And we're going to be talking about this Scorpio eclipse. So many things really popping now. We're going to go back and talk about the last time this happened, which was last year. Talk about some case studies. The chart of Barbados, which just declared independence from England. We're going to talk about the nodes in general, how they refer to royalty, to kingship, also, of course, conspiracies, paranoia, fear, stress. As we're talking here today, we just have the new Omicron variant, and of course, if you're hip, it's just them distracting us from the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. We have the QAnon world blowing up. It's all drama, folks, and who better to help us than Casey? Thanks, Casey. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Sam, for having me.
And Casey, he's a Scorpio, right, Casey?
That's right. That's right.
So how's this feeling for you as a Scorpio?
Oh, it's been a pretty reclusive month for me because the 12th house cycle, Mars is in the 12th house, so I've been pretty quiet, kind of laying low, and just trying to respect the cycles.
Scorpios be styling though, boy, with that K2 going through the first, if they're able to handle that energy. And so as you see here, this is a portrait of the sky. And by the way, Casey and I were saying here before, of course, we use the sidereal zodiac as is in all the Indian astrology text. Western astrology, this is Sagittarius, but boy, sure feels like Scorpio to me, huh?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and if we're using astrology, we want to be able to see it and confirm it with our own eyes in the sky, right?
Yeah, and so again, this is a obvious indicator of where it's happening in the sky. And so as you see, this astronomically is where the conjunction happens. And these 12, 30-degree portions of the sky they go back into 3,500 years back in the ancient Babylonian times. These portions were laid out. So again, we can really feel those indicators of Scorpio. I did a whole, several recent updates on Scorpio as the powerful little insect and stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about that here, but we're mainly going to be doing case studies on, like, this is the Barbados chart. We also, at this time last year was when the Electoral College met. This is Donald Trump's chart, and you can see that eclipse was right on his moon. This was also the day that both the U.S. and Canada actually started doing CoVid inoculations and whatnot. So these eclipses are real. And so we're going to break out all that kind of stuff in this. I just wanted to also say before we get going, you can see scrolling on the bottom is the 2022 free web class. If you're watching this, you can go to the link that's in the description and get the free web class. Again, these 10 important shifts that you must know. I did it last year in 2020. I don't know about you, but so many astrologers, if not almost all of them, were saying, if you thought 2020 was bad, just wait for 2021 and how it's going to be much worse. Of course, by most objective standards, it has not been. Things have been much better. We weren't on lockdown all year and all of that. It started with intensity, but it got much better. So again, you want to understand these things. So go ahead to that web page, just click register now, and it's very easy to do that. Also, I want to let people know that Casey, this is Casey's Instagram page, and we're going to have a link below for his stuff. You can see he does all these cool diagrams. Casey's really taken off with his astrology practice and his creative approach and his technical approach to bringing this stuff out. And so as you see, it's Gold Star Astrology here on Instagram, and we'll put that there as well in the links below. But Casey's going to take us. See, here's one of his great diagrams. Casey, you want to talk to us about what this eclipse is? I'm going to be quiet and let you take it away here.
Well, thanks. This eclipse, as it is every eclipse season, we get the sensationalized what it's going to be, and even though there's a lot of truth to that because it's turbulent, it's dramatic, and especially with this Scorpio energy, right? And it's pretty clearly Scorpio energy that's going on because, like you said, the conspiracies, the variant coming out, and all the conspiracies about
Sudden and
what that
shocking.
means.
Look, and just notice how it's out of the blue. A few days ago, we didn't even know about it. Now, all of a sudden, bam, it's blown up in our face.
Right. And, as a Scorpio, the tendency is to react before you gather the information, right? Because Mars and Mercury always have a tense relationship to each other. And so that's just the nature of Scorpio, is that the feelings, it's a water sign, right? So that it relates to emotions, and it's Mars where we're trying to overcome these feelings, right? And so the tendency in people is to have a feeling and instantly act on that feeling, rather than kind of like, hey, what's going on? Be curious about it, right?
And with Mars too, and people have a feeling, and the thing is, well, what do I do about it, Mars?
Mm-hmm.
What do I do? Is
Right.
it good or bad? Notice that's the emotionally reactive part. I feel this now. What do I do? And is it good or bad?
Right. And people have a bias towards the stronger planet in their chart, right? Because very few people have a bias towards Saturn, right? Which is like, slow down. Let's kind of let's just slow this whole thing down. They have this bias towards Mars, like, do something quick, or towards Jupiter, like, what does it mean? Like they'll trying to project meaning onto something when we don't have all the information. It's brand new. So of course we don't know. So all that's happening, all that's coming up, and the new moon and the solar eclipse is always a time when we're kind of brought, that moon kind of darkens and a seed gets planted, right? So when we have an eclipse, it's not just coming together this way, it's also coming together that way. So vertically and horizontally, it comes together in 3 dimensions. So it's a little extra potency, right? The eclipses are magnified and intensifying energy, right? Because it's all concentrated in this one area where you've got the ecliptic plane where the sun runs, and you've got the lunar plane where the moon runs, and it's all lining up. So all that energy that it takes to move around the solar system is all gathering together, right? So when these things happen, when we want to know what it means, right, we just do science, right? What does it mean? Well, where does it happen, right? So we just kind of, like you said, we looked before, and it's right there in Scorpio. And so Scorpio is, it's right there in the name. It means scorpion, right? It's about this tiny little bug, like you call it, right? And kind of hiding in your hole, and kind of puts an emphasis on impermanence, right? Because the bug is always aware that it can be squished, right? And so as kind of the 8th sign of Aries to Scorpio, and there's this feeling of impermanence, of nothing can last forever. And with that, all of our stuff comes up around death, right? And if you ever want to see things fall apart, if there's a death in the family, that's a thing that a lot of families fall apart when there's a death, because everyone's feelings around mortality are brought up, and then
exactly.
we're all
and even brings in siblings. It's a fracture in that stability, and we can really see it now again with the world. Just notice how vulnerable everything is. By the way, we haven't even mentioned today in the US, even before the Supreme Court right now, which the courts, we're going to get into this in a bit here with the nodes, and also how eclipses are connected to royalty.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that includes governments and also the laws. But right now, before the U.S. Supreme Court, supposedly one of the most civilized countries, or the most civilized country in the world, they're debating whether or not to take away a woman's right to have autonomy over her body. The Roe V Wade decision is in front of the U.S. Supreme Court right now, and it's probably going to be outlawed at some point. It's not going to be a national law anymore. It'll be left to the states, which is just a way to niggle away at a basic human right, in my opinion, and in most people's view. So again, all of these things make us feel vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Makes women vulnerable, make us all feel vulnerable, like, what is the world coming to, kind of thing. The Omicron thing is hanging out there, which, by the way, I don't think it's going to be I think it's just a lot of imagined fear right now. But again, we also have to be aware of them using it to control us and to crack down a little bit more. And by the way, we can choose to even look at those things in many different ways. We can choose to look at it like, oh, it's the government's oppressing us so they can, turn us into zombies. I don't know, whatever the most apocalyptic scenario would be. Or you could say, yes, these government, they are overreaching out of caution, and I don't like these restrictions. And even though I don't like it, it doesn't mean that it's two steps from fascism. Maybe it's also just overprotective and overcautious public, health, measures to try to push back against another pandemic, etc. But just to point out that the Scorpio kind of nature, the Scorpio energy is to maybe conflate, get paranoid about the darkest possibility.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And, a lot of those themes that you were just talking about are covered by the Vedic nakshatra, which is Jyeshta, right? And that means eldest or chief. And the Vedic root word of Ja means to grow old. And it also means to overpower and oppress, right? So all of those themes, when you get into the nakshatras, it really draws out a lot of these details that some people overlook when they're not looking at the whole picture, right? So Indra is the king of the gods, right? So there's that royal theme again, and just that chief and the king. And it's the part of the Scorpio where we learn about heroics and protective instincts, right? So it has that kind of like savior complex where I'm going to rescue people who don't want help, right? That's the big thing as a Jyeshta ascendant that I've had to learn, is that, sometimes you got to wait for permission, wait for the invitation, right? That's one of the big things that I've learned as a Jyeshta ascendant is when you kind of have that feeling to charge in and rescue and fix and do that, the Indra thing, I'm going to be the hero and save the day. But what can and sometimes does end up happening is they're like, hey man, nobody said that I was even in trouble, right? So
yeah, but it's also important to point out the beautiful quality of that, because Scorpio has that emotional courage and strength to get in there and rescue and do the things. And many times that's one of the hardest things for people to do, is to actually step up and be responsible in this world. So this is why you'll even often see certain signs or certain people wind up being in power because they want the power and they're ready to stand in the power. But this is also why power corrupts. Absolute power, they say, corrupts absolutely. And I also often talk about this, almost always when I talk about Indra, that in the Vedic, as a Vedic deity, it's like the pure, powerful, embodied expression of that power, right? It wasn't corrupted by the ego and stuff. In the later Puranic texts, like in the Bhagavatam and the Puranas, Indra winds up being much more an egoistic, almost sort of buffoon in many ways, which really shows more of a corruption in this world of how power corrupts in this world. Mm-hmm. Whereas in a Vedic text, in a Vedic context, like you're saying, it's not. It's more that pure expression of power. So this is how we can even really see the higher and lower qualities of that Jyeshta, that Indra, and that Scorpio quality.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Indian teachings, is they usually change with the times. So if we're trying to connect to energies that are universal, right? And our perspective changes as our culture changes. And so the stories change if you want to relate to that energy, think about this type of thing.
Well,
right?
It shows you like a very mundane, worldly nature, like you'll see it show up this way, but then the higher evolutionary potential is also there, particularly like this is why, especially with nakshatras, I just did a long class on the nakshatras at the Sedona conference. And when you're talking about the nakshatras, you're really talking about the pure Vedic deities, which were gods. Like these are the virtuous qualities of that thing. So when you're looking at those energies, they're very pure. And I even call it like that astrological hero's journey, because it's the direct connection to a transcendent power, right? And so, but then we come into the world and we're in all of our samskaras and in our stories, and it can get sort of twisted. But people should understand that's a beautiful nature of Scorpio, that sign really has two main qualities. One is that emotional heroism, which is related to Jeshta, and the other is that deeply devotional one, which is related to Anuradha. Those are the two main nakshatras. The first one is Vishaka, which is also there, but it's mainly Anuradha, which is very devotional, and Jeshta, which is sort of very heroic and like emotionally heroic.
Yeah, the examples I usually give are like a therapist, right? Where
Yeah, that's why I say too. Yeah,
you're a friend, right? You're a friend, and you're also a Jeshta where you're not afraid to get in there and do the hard work when difficult stories start coming up, right?
Yeah, so. And the Anuradha is ruled by Mitra, the divine friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And you could see in this was the one last year, the Electoral College. You know what happened last year is this is Trump, the last president. You could see he had Ketu Moon 28 degrees in his natal chart. This is where he has it, and you know they're both almost exactly the same. This is like 20 degrees of arc. It's exact Ketu Moon, and the eclipse last year. Look, 28. This is where it happened, literally right on the moon. And this was the day that the Electoral College met, and finally all of the machinations that happened after the election to try to get electors to not validate states' elections and all that. This was the day that it ended last year, right on his debilitated moon. Eclipse right on his debilitated moon is when the Electoral College met. And by the end of that day, the only option that was left was to attempt a coup, to roll tanks down the street or attempt a government overthrow. There was nothing legal after this. This was the day that all legal options were over, right? And as Casey said, this was also the day, or I said it, that the U.S. and Canada both started their vaccination program. Isn't that correct, Casey?
That's correct. Yeah, the same day that Europe came the week before, but that's the day that U.S. and Canada started rolling out the vaccines for mass vaccinations.
Now, again, this is really related to Scorpio and Ketu. Again, notice it's almost the exact same degree as the one now. And you want to understand Ketu is like a needle. It's literally like a needle. So is Scorpio. These things are not just metaphoric. Scorpio has the point on the tail that is an injection. It's right. Like literally like an injection. Mm-hmm. And so we started the healing injections. This isn't bad injections. These are healing injections, vaccinations, where you stick a needle in someone's arm and give them, and poison becomes medicine. Medicine is poison in the right dosage. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. And so that's what we have. Casey, you have a few things to say about that. I'm sure you do.
And could be said to be the U.S. ascendant also is the end of Scorpio. And we've talked about that before. And then also the current president, Biden, that's his ascendant is Scorpio also. And so that's the cycle that started with all that, but it also, before it ended, and was the January 6th thing, right? That happened during that cycle, right? So unpacking a lot of that shadow part of the eclipse, right? Where the K2 can be that really inward single pointed focus, that like the needle, right? And it's also can be that conspiracy, and because the word K2 means to reveal something hidden, right? And so one of the problems with K2 is we can get so obsessed with the microscopic that we miss the big picture. We miss the conceptual, right? And that's just a typical problem of Scorpio also, is just so pressed up against the conspiracy that we lack a general broader vision of what's actually happening.
Yeah, and this is I realized I just made this chart. I realized I didn't have this one. This is 12/3 at the end of the day in the West Coast. But as you see, this it's actually 12/4 early in the morning, 12/4. But this is where the eclipse is this time. This is this eclipse, and where Mercury is there, and the sun and moon are there, right? So it's at the very end of the day on the 3rd, very early morning on the 4th in the West Coast. But the rest of the world, it's early in the morning on the 4th. But The thing about Rahu and Ketu, though, as well as I've said for so long, and others, certainly those who've studied with me and others have heard, is that they both bring obsessions. And Rahu is obsessed with the external and the blindness and confusion. The confusion of Rahu is the external confusion that says, and it's where we often will not listen to anyone. We're like, and Rahu doesn't listen because it's like, well, it's up to me to make all the mistakes. I'm going to make all the mistakes, so I'm going to do whatever I want, and I don't want to hear you. If I need to make that mistake 100 times, I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to listen to what your advice. Right? This is why the most anathema planet against Rahu is Jupiter. This is why Rahu interferes with Jupiter more than anything, because Jupiter is where we can naturally just have a lot of wisdom and not have to make a lot of mistakes. We can just see the truth and not have to make a lot of dumb mistakes, right? So Rahu can tend to undermine that or not learn from mistakes. If Jupiter's powerful, we can learn from the mistake very quickly. We maybe only see somebody else make the mistake and we can learn it, right? And some version of that. Rahu is where, no, I'm going to keep making the mistake until I'm done, right? And you can't talk to me. Ketu is the opposite. Ketu says, I'm not going to listen to you because I already have it all figured out. I'm not here to make a lot of mistakes. I already know. I'm already certain. I know for sure that it's the lizard people or whatever it might be. Like if it collapses around a conspiracy or something where, no, look, I've done my research. I've gathered all the information I need. Look, there's this and there's that, and there's the WHO and Gates and Fauci, and so I've done it all. And now this is it. And it's the only possibility. I don't want to hear anything else. Now I've decided it's this, and I've also decided that everyone else is completely wrong. Again, K2 brings this kind of divine disgust. Yeah. Not only am I right, but anyone who doesn't agree, you are the lowest of the low, and the dumbest, and it's even literally where, fanatical terrorism, all kinds of stuff can be. It's very scary energy with K2, because once we dehumanize and we completely, we can convince ourselves that not only am I right and you're wrong, but your version of being wrong is going to kill us all. So maybe you need to be killed. Yeah. I mean, it can be very fanatical. Right. So this is why you see so much dark fanaticism that's possible, and that we're even seeing come out now.
Yeah, there's a good quote that says a fanatic can't change their mind and won't change the subject. So that's think about it. Like ever since,
and they never get tired of railing and whatnot. They will exhaust you. This is why the kind of fanaticism that we see, it's when you're moderate, it's hard because the fanatic never gets tired of talking about it. Like you say, they won't change the subject, and they're in many ways, their whole lifeblood kind of revolves around it. And you can see that the nodes do this. They're getting the lifeblood from the sun, because the sun is the life. Their sun is the energy. I'm sorry, Casey, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. The other thing is Mercury has been implicated in both of these eclipses, right? And that's part of what the issue is we don't have enough curiosity. Right. Like I said, what did it take to change your mind? And a lot of people, nothing could possibly change my mind. And so, that's what we need, a little more of the positive Mercury energy, which is like, I don't know, that the beauty of I don't know, and just a little more research and questions and how does it work? And all of that would open up the conversation.
Even the experience, like you're saying, and I've been talking about this as well off and on. One of the biggest things that came out here even recently, was in QAnon world, if we're talking about conspiracies, is that there's just been a huge scandal that blew up in the QAnon world with a couple of the big QAnon celebrities, Lynn Wood and Mike Flynn and Marjorie Taylor Greene. They've all been kind of at battle after the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. The Kyle Rittenhouse, the man from Wisconsin who was found not guilty of murdering the people during the riots. Lynn Wood, who was a QAnon type lawyer, was Kyle Rittenhouse hired him to be his lawyer, and then Rittenhouse said that Wood took his money and all this stuff, and then Mike Flynn came out against it. All this stuff they've been kind of battling in QAnon world, And there was a secret recording that was released recently of Lynn Wood, who had secretly taped Mike Flynn, and Mike Flynn saying that he thinks that QAnon is just a bunch of lunacy dreamed up maybe by the CIA and all again. So it's like conspiracy upon conspiracy. But the reason I'm saying this too, again, all of this is happening now. This is all kind of Scorpio, hidden agenda, conspiracy, and conspiracy upon conspiracy. This is like meta conspiracy. This is like the heroes of the biggest conspiracy we've seen saying that I think it's the CIA making the conspiracy. It's like meta conspiracy upon kind of lunacy. And the reason I also brought up is because you said that none of this really dissuades people from still believing in QAnon. How much QAnon has been proven wrong already, and it's remarkably still going.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, how many more ways can it be wrong and people still believe it? Some version of it. It just keeps that, well, Trump will come back or whatever it might be. And refusing to learn from the failures. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And this is kind of the intensity of the Scorpio energy, especially as we get closer to Sagittarius, right? Where the galactic core is. And it's, the Scorpio energy is supposed to shatter the illusions.
Right.
That's kind of what's supposed to happen because we're filled with certainties, right? We're filled with convictions. And, that thing about conviction is it's a life sentence, right? It's these things are supposed to shatter in Scorpio because then we're on our knees going, why did this happen? And then the grace of Sagittarius can flow, right? But until we get to that point, it's just confirmation bias, right? And unless that certainty is destabilized,
and with Scorpio, it's confirmation bias based on our fears and our paranoia. Yeah. So we got to be clear about it too, because all the signs have their own version of confirmation bias. Like with Sagittarius, there's confirmation bias because we want to believe, we want to confirm our beliefs. So all the signs need their confirmation bias shattered.
Mm-hmm.
And it's shattered by the opposite thing usually, and the thing that's in the 8th house from it. I've done several classes on this lately about how this transformation works. But with Scorpio, the confirmation bias is, see, I'm right. They are out to get us. It is, and it's based on the vulnerability. So it's like, yes, I am vulnerable, and I'm vulnerable to them, to these these powers that are ruling over me.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, that brings us to our knees where we're like looking for an answer.
Right. And, the thing about the nodes is Rahu's the head, right? And it's all up in your head. And none of it, you don't want any of it to be in your body because you have no body, right? So it's fine if it's just this story, right? It's just this thing that I dreamed up in my head. With Ketu, there's no head, right? So it's like, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. This is the way it is. I don't want to use my head.
That's a great distinction.
Right. So that Ketu energy doesn't want to think about it. It doesn't want to talk about it. Doesn't want to do anything because there's no head. So
and you can see, and you talk about this here. It would be good to, like you really draw out here in this. This is Casey's chart on the nodes, about Ketu, the South Node descending and the evolving process. You want to take us through that?
Right. So like you said, it's that disgust, that aversion, right? Those things that we want to get away from us. And, when we encounter a Ketu situation, that's why it is such a dramatic experience, is because some people push so hard away against anything bad that when something happens, it's this explosion happens. So that's why it's exalted in Scorpio, because when you're a Scorpio, it's kind of, how are you going to avoid it? Because that's your life. So that energy of Ketu is disgust and push it away. It starts out as like literally disgust and body dysmorphia and food and chemical intolerances, right? Think about those things that you just get away from me, right? And then psychologically and socially, it's like the hermit, right? Where you want to get away from everybody. And it's like that thinking better, right? I got it all figured out. I don't want to have anything in my head, right? And so it's really hypercritical. And so it can end up being that person that kind of just pokes holes in everybody's theories, like the needle, right? It's just poking holes in everybody's thoughts. And so then it, what it can be, what it really wants to be is mastery, right? Because K2 is the energy of finishing karmas. It's like the Terminator, right? So it wants to be detached from this whole story in our head. It wants to be detached from the karma of this world. It wants to just single pointed focus and becomes all knowingness, right? That's kind of the goal of K2, is just to focus so much on that one thing that you know about everything.
Yeah, and the reason why, without a doubt, K2 is so powerful in Scorpio. You even look at just a couple of the things. The Scorpio can become like quite obsessed over things, right? That kind of focal point of Mars, which Mars is really the planet of obsession, the visible planet, the Graha, because again, Mars is very focused. It's one-pointed. Subramanya, Kartikeya holds a spear. I mean, again, you look at the weapons and stuff. He's got a spear. A spear is going to poke you. And again, Mars is basically like, what am I focused on? Again, if you take focus to its culminating point, it's obsession, right? And again, like that one pointed focus to make yourself strong, get you in the gym, and you're obsessed. People get obsessed, and you can see their obsessions a lot with Mars. In Scorpio, it's like an emotional obsession, but so is K2. And you can see K2 again, it's like that laser pointer, and it's that one pointed focus that, as you say, this kind of mastery and detachment. The reason people gather information and they become focused and obsessed, with K2 is because they think this is making me strong. This is right. I'm right. And I know I'm right. And I've been here and done that. And I know it's right. And again, it's a blinder. There's a blinding influence. And so when you might think that it would be excessive when you bring it into Scorpio. But the other thing about Scorpio is that emotional courage and that sensitivity will take that focus of K2 and also because Scorpio likes to be in that hole and likes to be protected and likes to be withdrawn from things that are dangerous. The energy of K2 goes in and it becomes that like inner mastery. They both kind of work together. The obsessive quality of K2 and the obsessive quality of Scorpio, and the focus, the narrow gaze, knowing that K2's real goal is transcendence, and so is Scorpio. But they're transcending for different reasons in many ways. But it's not so different. They're both kind of disgusted. Scorpio is more vulnerable and fearful as a motivator, as a motivating principle, but it becomes very much about strength and power as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can even see that stinger on the scorpion tail is like K2.
Mm-hmm.
So you can think of K2 even like as a drill bit, or like something that just goes deep, like this has a Scorpio quality, just long and narrow, whereas K2 is wide, and this way K2 is like long and narrow, and it's just like a drill bit going down into a hole and forming a hole, and Scorpio lives in the hole.
Yeah. Right. It's like that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Like you said, I feel whole in my hole. That's what you said on your December thing. Yeah, that was good.
So do a couple case studies here as well. I just did the one from last year where we really saw with Trump. It's very obvious here because this was, again, when you look at things, this was his debilitated moon, or the moon is debilitated in his natal chart, and it was eclipsed again by the debilitated moon. So this is why also when you get eclipses there in Scorpio, we're feeling kind of debilitated, right? But again, K2 being powerful and these other planets there made it so that ultimately this was the right thing. It sucked being him that day because he was putting a lot of hopes on some miracle that didn't come. And it was great for the rest of us because this was, again, when vaccines started and all that stuff. Again, you can even look at this chart. Jupiter is deeply debilitated, but it's with Saturn in its own sign as well. You can see this is called a Nichabanga, which means, again, Jupiter is at its deepest ability, 5 degrees of Capricorn. Yep. And Saturn is right there at 5. This is a planetary war practically. And so again, you can see all kinds of stuff going on here. But this wound up being auspicious in many ways. So you can't just judge it simplistically. But we can also see, this is the chart of Barbados, which to them, this was a liberating chart for them. So take us through this chart, Casey.
Yeah, and one of the things that you touched on that we should mention is that the eclipses, because they kind of steal the light of the sun, they have a lot to do with royalty, right? Because the sun's the king, and so when you're kind of taking the light of the sun, you're kind of stealing from the authority, the powers that be, right? And so, with this particular case study, Barbados was declaring themselves sovereign from the queen, right? So ending 400 years of rule by the Queen of England and the King of England, right? So the royalty, they're declaring themselves, they're not even they're still going to be part of the Commonwealth, but they're not going to be sending stuff for the Queen's approval, right? They're sovereign. And so, just like we would expect to see K2 and the sun are together, right? So it's like finishing that authority, right? Finishing that authority figure. And it's a Leo ascendant, which is about power and authority. And so the sun's the ruling planet, right? So they're just kind of declaring themselves sovereign from the ruling authority. And so, this is also the same day that the Ghislaine Maxwell trial started, like 10 hours before that in New York, but a lot of the placements are very similar. And so, while we're looking at that sun and K2 and Mercury, we want to look at where Mars goes, right? Because it's the ruling planet of Scorpio, right? And so we could see it's in the 12th sign from it, right? So it's like within a day of this eclipse, Mars actually moves from Libra into Scorpio, right? So it's like right now it's kind of in flux. There's a lot of transition happening with Mars, and as it comes over during this cycle, it's going to kind of ground that kind of confusion of Scorpio that's in there right now with the sun and K2 and Mercury, which is the sun does well and Scorpio, K2 does well and Scorpio, but together it's kind of confusing. And then Mercury in there kind of gets wrapped up in stories, and then Mars is 12th sign from it. So it's adding more of the air element of Libra, and it's just it's in transition, right? So later in this cycle, it should stabilize more with Mars kind of being the ruler and kind of making that K2 energy a little more under control, right? Because right now it might be a little, like you said, conspiratorial, what is happening, and really kind of micro under the microscope and not kind of stepping back. It's how does this all fit together? And so when Mars comes into there, it should help with that quality and be more like, this is where it's going, and kind of give it a little more purpose and direction.
Yeah, but this is a great case study because we can see that the ruling planet goes into the 4th house, and the 4th house in a country's chart is literally the homeland, forms a Raja Yoga, which means the sun, the angle lord in the trinal house, forms a Raja Yoga in the 4th house, very powerful, and with K2, and with what you would call an exalted K2. So there's nothing namby-pamby about this. This is very strong, very powerful, and Jupiter is the Raja Yoga planet aspecting the ascendant here as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also, K2 and Rahu both become Yoga Karaka planets because they're joined or aspected by a trine planet in an angle, right? So that is a little technical, but it means that it has the power to do stuff as an angle, right? Because angles are about structure of life, and then the trine aspect or conjunction gives it wisdom, right? So there's a lot of power in this chart here.
Absolutely. So again, you can see, but if you're a royal, look at the royal. And by the way, I could have had 100 charts here, but I was just looking for the case studies where I did a class before. There's a video on my YouTube channel. I've done several about popes and kings and the nodes, where almost every pope and every sovereign, especially like in England, Charles, Diana, the other ones, I can't remember all of them. The kids, Philip, whatever their names are, I don't keep track. But almost all of them were either born on eclipses, the day of an eclipse. It's shocking how many popes and kings were born either on eclipses. Charles and Diana were married on an eclipse. Like, it's shocking how many were either born on an eclipse or like the day before or something like that. And that includes popes as well.
Yeah.
So this connection between the nodes and because they're all royalty, whether you want to think a pope is royalty or not, they are. They're the king of the church. And by the way, at the time, they were more powerful than the kings back in the Middle Ages. So, but you see that the royalty, and again, understand it's not just poetry. The nodes can bring the sun down. They bring the sun, they eclipse the sun. It's the sun getting blocked out. So K2 joins the sun, and the British crown loses a territory in this way.
And Prince Charles was there at the ceremony and talked about the shame of Britain enslaving the people, and talking about how that kind of, and part of this, like I said, the poison coming up is healing, right? Just like when we have to bring up these traumatic experiences to heal from it, right? So, and he was there kind of eating crow on behalf of the royal family, saying, there's no excuse for it. It was wrong, right? And so he had to kind of be eclipsed at that moment.
Exactly.
To
very well said. And he's having to eat crow now, not because they really want to, but because we live in a world now where you got to eat crow, because we're already, it's not like they would have done it. He would have done it otherwise. He would have been like, oh yeah, I can't wait to get up and say how Britain has been terrible by enslaving people. No, we live in a world now where, again, trying to hold on to your claim as an overlord of a people that you enslaved is a little hard to maintain. It's not good PR. And by the way, look at the royalty the last couple of years. They've been, with whatever their names were. I can't remember all those names. Those people who are they? Meghan, was that her name?
Oh, Meghan and the Harry.
Yeah, all that stuff. I watch all of it, but I can't remember their names because I don't really care that much. But you can see how the royalty and royals have been pretty under scrutiny, right?
Oh, yeah, and not to overlook this fact, but the Ghislaine Maxwell case.
I was about to bring it up. So
Prince Andrew, Charles's brother, is implicated in all that, right? He was with Epstein and has pictures with young girls, and it doesn't look good at all.
This is another huge thing. Look at how many things are converging right now around this eclipse cycle. And again, it's K2, which is also about Casey has it here. I almost called you K2. I said Casey. I almost said K2 has it here. Casey. That it's about the past.
Yeah.
And again, look at how much past karma is coming right now.
Yeah.
How much of this is past karma, especially like all of this stuff, Ghislaine Maxwell, these past crimes with pedophilia and these kings. How many kings were mentioned in the pilot's logs? If you watched the news the other day, the pilot said, he said he didn't see any sexual misconduct and like that, but he was like, oh yeah, Bill Clinton went on it, the prince went on it, this one, and all of these kings, Bill Gates, these are all kings. You have to evolve your idea of what a king is. They're a powerful person. They might literally be a president or royalty, but it's also Bill Gates is a king. Elon Musk, these are kings. In fact, more now than ever because they're the king makers. And this trial with Ghislaine Maxwell is showing all of the the dirty secrets, the hidden secrets, it's now coming out with the trial and the kings being held to account somewhat, again, of course.
So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But while the exposure, it's coming out.
Yeah.
And who's being embarrassed? Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, the print, whoever, and we've just started with it, but it's coming out. All the disclosures are coming out.
Mm-hmm.
The same way with, again, like you might look at the idea of these variants that are still circulating. Again, and it's not to blame, but a lot of it you would say are, in fact, it's unvaccinated people that are catching it and vaccinated people. But again, the more we adhere to pushing the virus down through vaccinations and measures, the less the variants can spread. Again, it's not a blame. It's just K2 is returning, is like rendering a verdict here. It's from the past to the present. And also this stuff with the QAnon that I'm mentioning, all these, this is the stuff that's juicy to a lot of people because this is the karma. You live in the conspiracy world and you're Lynn Wood and you're telling people to overthrow the government and Mike Flynn. And these are the people that said they wanted to roll tanks down the street and put, the attorney general's head on a pike and all this kind of stuff. You engage in this kind of rhetoric with conspiracies and you fan the flames of conspiracies. Well, you might be part of the conspiracy next. So again, this is very K2 karma revisiting. And again, of course, there's the conspiracy that, well, they're bringing out Omicron now to distract from Ghislaine Maxwell and all this. Again, it could just be layers of conspiracy and whatnot going on right now.
Well, and like we talked about before, Scorpio is where the illusion shatters. So whoever you've got up on the pedestal as the pure, unblemished, that's going to come down to earth, right? It's going to get shattered and you're going to go, well, who do we trust, right? And okay, perfect. Now you started asking questions. Now you can get some answers, right?
Exactly. And, I talked about this in my update the other day. Everybody is looking like, again, the thing you just said, who do I trust? Who do I trust? Because God knows I don't want to think and I don't want to practice. Right. God knows I don't want to be alone and meditate and just connect to the source. And because we don't do that, we're hypnotized by the extra, this, that, no, they've been doing it the whole time. And we spin out on paranoia. Who do I trust? This one, is it this conspiratorial voice? Is it right wing? Is it left wing? Is it, I really like what Russell Brand is saying these, and I like this one and that one and, whoever it might be. Who do I trust? Well, right. None of that, first of all.
And a little bit from everyone, right? They all have something to say that kind of provokes something in us. And that's the point. Provoke something in you, right? That provokes something in you that is inspiring. And then is like, where does that take me?
And we're using trust differently, though. I wouldn't call that trust because we're talking about if you're triggered, and fearful and paranoid and looking for who to trust.
Yeah,
those two things do not go well.
Yeah,
that's what I meant. And I listened to all of it. Like I said, we were talking before. I listened to all of it. And I don't trust any of it. I don't trust any politician. I listened to all of it, and it's like, okay, this one, that one. I listened to all of it, and I don't trust any of it because why should I trust anything? I don't trust anything out here. The trust comes in here.
Right.
That's the only place it is. Right.
100%. Yeah, exactly. And the thing that we're really trying to shatter is our confirmation bias, right? Because if we never look at anything outside of what we already know, then we're done, right? We're as far as we're going to get. So kind of the purpose of all these practices is to discard the karma, right? The karma is what we've already done. And so we want to transcend that, which means that we have to go, hey, I don't have all the answers. And then something new starts happening.
Yeah. And the thing that's so rich about this being in Scorpio is because of that. So many things converging. I emailed you about this. Was it yesterday or the day before? And I didn't even know we'd wake up and it would be Roe v. Wade and the big and Omicron is is it Omicron? Yeah, Omicron.
Omicron, yeah.
The only thing I know about Omicron is, I don't know, do you watch Star Trek Next Generation?
I used to watch it when I was a kid. Yeah.
Okay, well, the main thing I heard with Omicron was that Data was born on Omicron Theta when the crystal entity attacked. I don't know what Omicron is. So Data was born on Omicron Theta. So you Trekkies out there, TNG, I know what Omicron is. The crystalline entity destroyed the villagers, but he escaped. So that's how I knew what Omicron was. So anyway, but this so many things converging even yesterday, because we were going to talk about Ghislaine Maxwell. We were going to talk about this Barbados chart and the royalty and those connections, and then start thinking more. It's like, oh yeah, there's this and there's that. And I'm thinking before, oh yeah, the whole big QAnon conspiracy thing has also just been, that also is just so rich, because you like Marjorie Taylor Greene is attacking this one. I think they're all basically attacking Lynn Wood, the lawyer, right? Or I don't know. But then again, having Mike Flynn on record as saying, I think it's all just a CIA conspiracy. I think our QAnon conspiracy is actually a CIA conspiracy. Conspiracy upon conspiracy and paranoia. And, it's like at some point, again, like, who do you trust? How about, especially if you're looking at all of this, how can you still hold all this up as being credible?
Right. Yeah. And, this is something that I do on my Instagram page periodically, is I go, okay, well, there's a lot of story surrounding, we're inflating what this means, but, the blessing of studying it for a while is it's not the first time this has happened. Let's go back a little bit and see what happened last time. The nodes were in Scorpio and Taurus. What happened what happened in 2003 when Mars and K2 joined in Scorpio? You can come up with some of these kind of serious examples, like the invasion of Iraq happened shortly after Mars and K2 came together last time. Where the weapons of mass destruction was the Scorpio thing getting inflated, right? And then the time before that was 1983 or 84. And that's right when AIDS happened. And think about the hysteria around AIDS right as it happened in 1984.
Oh, those are great case studies.
Yeah. And
so the last two Mars, so the last two Mars, K2 and Scorpio, was the invasion of Iraq, and like when AIDS was coming, was being blown up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So again, we can see the connections to the diseases and the illnesses, and also the cures. And by the way, that's also when Fauci rose to prominence as one who, actually, in his day, he was considered quite a hero, because he stopped talking about AIDS as a gay virus and said viruses aren't, they're not gay or straight or whatever. It's just a disease. He took it out of the political, because I know, because I lived through those times, that it was incredibly political, especially right-wing politics, and people like Jerry Falwell saying that AIDS is punishment for homosexuality and all this stuff. And while all that nonsense was being said, Fauci was saying, hey, we need to take it out of all that stuff. Right. So that was his original legacy. Now it's become God knows what.
Right. And I think 2003 was right around SARS also, right around that time. I'd have to look at it exactly, but I think it's right in there.
Maybe do another case study here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when we do Casey and I are talking about doing a full-on USA Scorpio chart, because I said it a couple years ago that I think the USA ascendant is Scorpio. And Casey's also done some research on that. By the way, as you see, I have Casey's Instagram page up here, and it's goldstar-astrology.com is his website. And you can see this is a few of his diagrams. You see how great these are. He does a full month in advance and does these updates. Really great researcher, and as you could tell, very intelligent guy about how he puts things together. We're going to be doing some more of these, but we're also going to be talking about the USA chart as Scorpio. And I've thought this for years and just started coming out a little bit more about it. Casey's also done some research into that. So we can include some of that in there as well, the Mars K2.
Cool. Yeah.
And how it affected the US.
Yeah.
Casey, anything we didn't get to? Because, we both kind of talked quite a bit, but I'm going to make sure that there's if there's something you didn't get to, that you didn't get to.
I think just to really hammer down that the K2 end of the node's getting activated, which brings up that stuff from the past, and then to just kind of like take a look at it and remember the mistakes that you made last time and try not to repeat those mistakes, because then you're perpetuating the karma, right? So we want to do something new for a new result, right? So those are different ways that I like to bring into my own practice and in my coaching program to just like bring up the higher possibility, right? And just like in therapy, right? Because Scorpio's that therapist sign, that sometimes you have to talk about those difficult things, just like Prince Charles had to talk about slavery. I'm sure he didn't want to, but we have to have that conversation. We have to let that shadowy stuff come up so that it can be healed, right? The poison gets transformed into the therapy.
And tell people a little bit about your work and your coaching program and things like that, because Casey does a lot of great work here.
I focus mainly on these lunar cycles, right? All my page is about the new moons and the full moons, and my coaching program is I take people through the cycles of the moon to kind of help them understand that it's not just a sign, it's a house, so it's personal to them. And so what does that house mean? We kind of explore the transition between the houses, because it's the exploring the whole incarnation, right? So it's focus on a different area of life, and here this turns into that, and kind of just understanding how life unfolds, and to have that as kind of a compass for yourself and an almanac for yourself is like, so you're not kind of swimming upstream, right, so to speak, where you're kind of using the wind in your sails to accomplish harmony with nature.
And so you bring people into that as a program, and it's like monthly cycles that they go
right
through.
And we do birth chart reading. I do birth chart readings too, where that's also satisfying to learn about yourself and your karma and all that stuff, but there's something a little extra to maintaining a relationship to an astrologer on an ongoing basis, so that it's not just this big thing and it's like, oh, I had a reading, and 10 years down the line you're still kind of picking out what happened. That on a continuous basis it really sinks in, and it just it's osmosis of learning how this all works without actually having to sit down and learn how it all
the time. So it's a combination of getting consultation and then having a roadmap to go through the year. And not to brag on myself here, because I'm not, but he went to my school certification, great student. When he started, he didn't really understand much of this at all, really. But again, because the training is good and he worked hard at it and had a natural affinity for it, it didn't take long before he started using those principles to really do like he's doing now, which is a successful astrologer and coaching program that's very successful. And so get involved with him, look over his links and whatnot. Casey, you have anything to say maybe a little bit about the course? Because there is some openings in the course now.
For sure. It was, when I first got involved and got a reading, it was, from an Indian guy, where it just fired off all these things and you don't know what's happening, and activated that curiosity in me. And you were the first person that I really encountered that really brought it down to earth and really explained the conceptual part of it, right? Because that can be so overlooked with all the, this and this and this and all these combinations, and you're trying to memorize. To have some sort of context for everything made all the difference in the world. And before I was even done that first year of certification, I was doing readings and making money and paid for the course more than once over. And it was just amazing. And not only the information to know myself and how my chart affects me and my family, but like to be able to help people understand themselves and getting involved in people's spiritual progress and helping them along that path of letting go of all their behaviors and becoming more of who they really are.
Yeah, it's the greatest thing in the world to be able to help people and know ourselves and see that. But yeah, Casey's a great example and of everything that a teacher like myself hopes to find, and especially to see such great work and then be a colleague. So thank you for that and sharing. Again, I just wanted to also let people know you've seen that the 2022 forecast is going to be available here. Go ahead and register for it, and learn about the next year ahead of you. It's very important stuff. It's free. And make sure to check out Casey's Instagram and his website. And he's doing great work. And I hope you got some insight from this on the Scorpio eclipse, Sun K2 Scorpio eclipse, all the stuff going on, and to really follow that real focus instead of being overwhelmed by the vulnerability and the stress. That's the gateway into bhakti, into devotion, into true courage and transcendence, because we're not in control. You've had the illusion of control, and in Scorpio is where that illusion gets shattered.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you need to now clutch for a greater illusion and who can I trust to reaffirm an even more fictitious illusion? No, it means you need to let go of it. And the next thing that comes is, oh, I was never in control to begin with. Oh, the world has always been full of craziness, and I just wasn't aware of it before. Now that things have blown up and bombs have been set in culture and in my life, it's the time to really find good teachings, to take my own counsel. So that's the greatest part of this section of the sky between Scorpio and Sagittarius. So I hope that's also resonant. Last things for you, Casey?
You said it perfectly, that to just kind of let those stories collapse and quit making everybody tiptoe around your fragile likes and dislikes, and just kind of laugh at the world. It's kind of ridiculous, right? It's okay to just crack up once in a while and be
and that's from someone with a lot of planets at Scorpio and Capricorn.
Yeah.
if I've been able to make him laugh. No.
And I mean, that's one of the big remedies, because that's not something that comes easy by nature. And so if I just remember that this is kind of comical, right? And so just laugh and remember, I don't know, I don't have all the answer, and what a relief that could be. It's
actually much more relieving. It's easier to just say, oh, you mean I'm not going to control it? Oh, whew, I don't even have to try. Wow.
Right.
Yeah. All right, man. Great to talk to you, and we'll be in touch, folks.
All right. Thank you, guys.